All right, we are live. Hey guys, welcome to another episode. Oh, and just in time, I got my little name thing down there. Welcome to another episode of the App Business Podcast. This is the App Business Weekly. So you can find us on abpweekly.com every Friday at 10 Eastern. It is 4 in Munich, right, David?
Totally, yeah.
Totally 4 p.m. in Munich, and it's 9 a.m. in Bogota. And I'm in a new place. I decided to move to a bigger place for the last 2 months here, so you guys can see some new beautiful pictures behind me. But yeah, man, this was a good week for me. How about for you?
Oh, it was a great week, all in all. I mean, I felt like we got so much done and, so much resolved. And it's always good to see that structures you put in place are starting to take effect. Changes you made that are a little bit more long term, not immediate, not, get this one task done, but more like, okay, maybe we can see an effect in a couple of weeks. And, if that takes effect after a couple of days already, then that makes me really happy.
And things that take a little bit more upfront to get right to do right. Like the good example I think is Trello. Like learning Trello, and you and Juan were right on it, but like teaching me how to communicate on Trello was a little bit. It just took a little bit of time, and it took me out of email and all that stuff. But it's definitely like now I'm doing Trello with Hazel because why wouldn't I? I mean, now we're going to manage everything that we do together through Trello, which is I just don't know why I wasn't using it before. It's like a light went on with Trello. So
hmm
now I'm like a super fan of Trello after like 2 weeks of using it. But not only things like that, but I'm just convinced, and I think it's really cool that we're going through this experience, and then we can share it on the podcast because this is like live learning about how here's a guy talking about me that went from okay, I know how to run things and all this kind of stuff, but managing developers is not easy, and to do more difficult code, when you start spending more than $2,000 per like build, let's say, or code base or whatever, or you start working with versioning and stuff, it is a harder, bigger thing to take on. And I took it on, but I almost immediately recognized I am going to need a partner for this to do it right. Like if I'm going to have clients that are paying me every month and they have their customers on the app and everything, if I'm going to do it right, I need a technical partner. And now I'm just going to share kind of like what I'm learning as we go here. I'm actually curious what you're learning, if anything, because this is a newer thing for you, I think, too. It's like being completely exposed to a dude that doesn't know how to do anything with as it concerns technical stuff. But let's be more specific. Let's say coding and
hmm
development. I'm wondering if any lights are going on, or if you're learning anything, like how to communicate with dummies like me. Um,
Yeah,
but
certainly. It's like every time you learn something when you are exposed to people that are outside of your peer group, in a wider sense. Um, I mean, it's not like I haven't communicated with people before who don't speak, developers speak and that kind of stuff. But usually it's with clients, right? And clients are very tricky in that regard because you just can't go to a client and say, hey, dude, you screwed up your communication completely.
yeah,
Let me show you how to do it correctly.
right.
Like, you just can't do that. And
Which is exactly how David communicated to me on Tuesday earlier. Like, dude, I can tell why Juan's confused because what is this supposed to mean? I'm like, dude, it means this, 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 and this. And in my mind, it was like, of course, it's what else could it mean? And he's like, well, why is it all? He just picked it apart, and yeah, it was really helpful. I feel like I'm learning a ton on this project with you. Almost to the point, I shared this on the podcast yesterday, almost to the point where I can't believe I've had some modest success in the App Store already without having a
yeah.
technical partner. Like, how have I made it this far? It's amazing. But yeah,
Yeah, but it's like, you know, it different systems for different purposes, I guess. And as long as you're working with one developer and uh, one person in general that's doing all of your stuff, then communication via email or Skype might be okay, or not using something like Trello might be okay. That all works as long as you're also working on pretty simple apps, pretty simple software. But we dialed up a couple of things here. We dialed up the number of people involved, so now the communication is much more intertwined between different people. And the difficulty of the software project is magnitudes higher than what you did before, right?
Yeah.
So, then you see your systems break down and you have to create better systems and more robust systems to handle that new situation. And that's, definitely something I learned because as much as my business partner, Stefan, and I focus on creating systems that could scale from just the two of us, or right now we have Bernd on, who's also a great developer, but it's mostly like two or three people on our company on internal stuff, and managing that is pretty easy. But we make us invent systems, create systems that can scale up to 10, 20, 100 people very fast because and this is something like that I haven't like invented, but more like I'm trying to listen to other people who are in another stage, so to speak, of success regarding software businesses, and they tell you like plan for success.
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is screw up your systems and then hit a wall every time you see an opportunity and you can't act on that opportunity because you don't have the systems in place that allow you to scale up to that opportunity.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think because of that, I can now see this in action, so to speak, with a couple of more people and see that the systems, once set up and explained properly, uh, seem to work. And that makes me really happy, and that is some learning, is some like validated learning for me. So that's
Yeah.
great.
And for the listeners, the goal of Opt-in Mobile is like, okay, we have 11 clients that paid before we had a product. Now we're shipping product, and so it's okay when because of Google AdWords and Facebook ads, you can like make the funnel. You can get as many sales as you need. It's just how much they cost to get the sale.
Hmm.
And so at some point, if we're good enough, we can turn it on to get 10, 100 people a day, and could our systems handle 10 a day, let's say? 10 a day is a good number, but it's not even that crazy. That'd be 300 clients a month. I mean, that's nothing for a simple little like onboarding of an app thing. It's not something that's so crazy to think that, oh my gosh, that's too much. Um, and that's kind of how we're building. That's kind of how we're like thinking about this as we go is, okay, how is this going to scale when we have 10 a day? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think we're doing a good job with that as we go. We're going super, super slow on the first one to watch everything we're doing. And then the second one, we'll kind of like see if we break the first one. And once we kind of feel like we have it, it'll be like, okay, let's open the floodgate. Or it'll probably be, let's take the next 100, uh,
Yeah. It's a
assuming we
slow
can.
opening of the
Yeah,
floodgate.
yeah. But yeah, it'll be really fun to see how resilient this thing is that we're building. But the actual app is turning out really nice, and that's obviously the main goal. So without that, we don't need the cool systems. Um, okay, cool. You want to review the week? How about or like the week of the podcast?
Totally. What I wanted to say in the beginning before we like dive into individual episodes, something like that, I immensely enjoyed the entire week regarding App Business Podcast, on every front. Like we got amazing comments.
Oh yeah,
We have great, comments in the Facebook group who are saying very nice things about the podcast. Thank you very much. It's really heartwarming, and it's such a motivation to really, just not just keep things going on the podcast, but put more energy in it, make it better, make it more high quality, and try to deliver, the best content we can. And it's, I want to just thank everybody who sent in something and motivated us to do this.
yeah, I agree. I'm curious what they're going to think of the interview we recorded yesterday because I didn't feel like that was my best interview, and I felt like we had a great opportunity to ask some deeper questions, and I was trying too hard to like do it the way he might wanted, even though he never said that that's what he wanted. But I was like trying too hard to show some of his other things that he was working on, when really I could have just picked his brain the whole time on working with press and working with journalists and all that stuff. And I kind of feel like that was a little bit of an opportunity lost by us, but mostly me. And I think it's because, and I'll just share it and I'll just say it, is I'm a little bit overwhelmed because App Jetpack, Opt-in Mobile, and the App Business MBA are all happening all at the same time. Like it's not like one is kind of going and the next one's starting and the next, and then the next one's 3 months out. It's like everything's happening right now. Like App Jetpack's ready to launch, Opt-in Mobile's like literally ready to launch. Like we could be a week away if we wanted. And App Business MBA was supposed to be up by Thursday, and it's not up yet. So it's like I think my head wasn't all the way in it, and it's a little frustrating because, when we record those things and we have those opportunities with these guys, it's like, you want to take full advantage. So I got to figure out either a better way to manage my time or like set aside an hour to get into podcast zone or something, because I mean, even when we were like getting ready to go before we pushed play, I mean, you could tell I was like it wasn't distracted. It was like, oh, wait, here's my notes for this guy. Okay, let me remember what I had on this guy. It's just really, I wasn't totally on top of it like I try to be. So I'm wondering if the audience will pick that up.
Yeah, jumping like right on the podcast without any break is something that seems to be affecting our performance. I mean, it's just like what I noted is when I have like even just 15 minutes before that, and even better if I can talk to you before it, like 10 minutes or 15 minutes before, then that's much better than just jumping on it and going right into the interview or whatever it is. So we need to cultivate that, but you know how just life happens and it's hard, but we're trying, and let's get better.
I think maybe we only take guests at the second hour or something, because that first hour we almost like need to warm up to the idea, because it really is David and I now, especially maybe this is it, especially with Opt-in Mobile, you and I are talking a lot more in a different way. Like we're not talking podcast. It's not like podcast voices. It's like we're not talking with an audience. We're like, cuss word, fix this. How can we get that done? Cuss word. And, it's not quite that bad. But on the podcast, it's like, okay, we have people listening. Let's make sure we're talking clearly and making our point concisely. And it's just a little messier when you're building something. I'm sure everyone understands that because they've been through that. But I think I totally recognized it on the interview yesterday, where I just didn't feel like on top of my game. And even like some of my more awkward parts of my personality came out. I'm just like, dude, I'm fine if like I don't need to sound like an all-star all the time. So I'm fine to be like not always sounding super cool, because everyone knows, gosh, I sound so super cool most of the time. No, but it's more like I just didn't feel like that was my best effort. So I'm curious. Let's see, this is going to come out. Oh, this comes out tomorrow, or anyone live is hearing this now. So we'll see if anyone picks up on what interview I'm talking about. But now it's going to sound like it's worse than it is.
It was really nice and definitely knew how to talk on a podcast and all.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a guest, so maybe let the listeners decide whether that was good.
Yeah. Okay.
And what we can do to make it better, of course.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So in terms of episodes, we had this week. I'm going in like reverse chronological order. An interview with Wroolie, and I think that was very nice of him to take the courage and get on the show. Although he's, in his own words, he's not like a super app millionaire, whatever, expert kind of person, and it was great that he did it, because he really told us something about Android and the differences in monetizing, the differences in how revenue is distributed over time, and all that kind of stuff. So we'll definitely take some of his advice as soon as we launch on Android.
The big takeaway. Yeah, the big takeaway for me was that Google treats their apps much more like they treat websites
Hmm.
than how Apple treats their apps. Like you'd assume, oh, it's apps and it's apps, so it's like, okay, it's similar to how Apple does it. It's way closer to how Google handles SEO. You know, with
Yeah.
like uh, I don't know what it's called, but like when like I'm not an SEO guy, but like when other sites link to you, and when social signals with Facebook likes and Google pluses and all this stuff,
Yeah.
where Apple seems to have a much smaller ecosystem. Um, so that definitely presents some challenges, but it also presents some opportunity for longer term apps that just like a blog, it starts out slow, and then after a year you've got something. I think that's, or
Yeah, and
hopefully,
it sounds easier to build real businesses, like long-term stuff. And
yeah,
if we can add that to our portfolio, that would be great.
yes, amen. Okay, then the one right before that, who's that? We had a guest there too, didn't we?
That was Chaim from Affordable Dev,
Oh, Chaim,
and
yes. Gosh, that
that was
seems
an
like a long time
interesting.
ago.
Yeah, yeah, it was an interesting conversation, right? So Chaim was, telling us something about his background and, how he operates his, whatever. I don't even know how to call it because it's not really an agency. It's more like uh, it's something between like a marketplace of developers and an agency, right? It's something
Yeah,
in the
that's
middle.
interesting that you say that. Because that's actually what drew me to him. And I told him, like, dude, I'm not hiring you to be a project manager. I'm hiring you to go like vet devs and then manage the devs, so I don't have to. And so that's kind of what it is. It's like a marketplace for devs. That's interesting. Um, yeah, yeah. It was fun to hear him talk like that, because I talk to him all the time. But again, it's the benefit of the podcast. You don't take 20 minutes to go and talk about this kind of stuff. Like we did a little bit right at the very beginning of our relationship. Like, what's your family like, and where you live, and where are you from, and all this kind of stuff. But then, a year goes by and you never talk like that again. And so it's, again, the podcast is like 20, 30 minutes of
Mhm.
uninterrupted conversation, and it's just another opportunity to like get to know someone on a different level. So it was fun to hear him like talk about his business. And I mean, even the ads, like we're the ones doing the ads for him. Like we don't even hear him sell the company. So it's just funny to hear him sell the company and talk about the company and what he thinks of it from his perspective.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting, and especially because we are working with him as well. It's funny that you get more of an insider's look into the company by recording a podcast or listening to the episode than we had before, where we were customers of him, right? So
Yeah, right.
definitely worth checking out, especially if you're trying to, or if you're in the hiring phase, where you're looking for developers.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, at the beginning of the week, we talked about Amazon Cognito, and it was my kind of topic, right? So we talked about like how it was similar to Hoodie and CloudKit, what the differences were. Um, I think like we went off on a tangent a little bit
Oh
somewhere in the
yeah,
episode. Yeah, I can't
yeah.
remember that, but
Did we talk about Often Mobile as a tangent, or something we talked about as a tangent?
yeah.
Um, but the feedback was that people like the tangents, like maybe not too much. Like I don't want to get into a habit of it, but when it's sharing especially now that we're working so closely together on two little projects. Well, Often Mobile is a bigger than little project, and then the Macaron Mania project. Um, I think listeners really enjoy hearing we're struggling with, or how we're communicating with each other. And I
Hmm.
know, as a listener, I know that's the things I enjoy. Like when it goes off script into more real stuff. I mean, we're not. David and I are both pretty like real all the time or whatever, but um, yeah, I think those little antidotes are really helpful, because for one, it's like, oh, that's how they're talking about it and thinking about it, and another, it's like, oh, they're like me too. Um, yeah, man, I swear I wish there was more podcasts when I first started. Now there's like there's like three new ones that we're finding out from listeners saying, hey, check out this one, check out that one.
Hmm.
Um, but there was just nothing like this when I was starting, talking about, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, and hey, check out Amazon Cognito. Like I think those episodes, David, are like maybe there's only a small group of listeners that love them, but I think they love them. I mean, I think they get a passionate response because I think it is cool. It's hard to find the right resources. It's hard to know what questions to ask for. So when you bring this stuff to the listeners and to me and to our business, I think you keep doing that.
Thanks. Yeah, I think what is important is to just be um, like presented with information that you wouldn't even know how to find. Like you wouldn't even know it exists, or you wouldn't even know what to ask or what you write in Google. And I think that's one of those things where I mean, offline first, no backend architecture
Right.
is new. That's nothing you can previously know, right? And so because it didn't exist before, like uh, how would you ever find it? So
Yeah. And we're playing with a lot of these things. Like it sounds like we're going to be like hoodie mascots here, which will be really fun. But then, like a lot of my apps were in the Optimizely beta. We signed up for the Facebook ad beta, but I don't know that we ever did anything with that. But we're trying to like use some of our own experiences as like, let's go experiment with some of these newer, cooler things. And so we'll hope to share that with you. For Amazon Cognito, we didn't sign up to use that because we're pretty happy with Hoodie. But again, it's another thing. Like if you don't like Hoodie or open source, or if it's just too new for you, well, Amazon doesn't get things wrong very often. So it's a good option.
yeah.
Yeah, I still need a better understanding or use case of how it's different than Parse. Although I kind of get it, like you can work with the app off when it's not connected to the internet, but
Hmm.
I kind of don't understand it. We don't need to do it now, but I'll tell you, man, I'm learning a ton from some of these topics we're having, and I think I was actually going to suggest some topics moving forward. The one we did on semantic versioning, that's coming out next week. Um, those kind of conversations, they might not only be good as podcast episodes, but people might really appreciate that for the App Business MBA. Like there might just be a whole different David section where it's here's how you set up Trello, here's how you work with Trello. Because Trello is super easy. It's like to do, doing, done, right? But the way we're doing it has a quality assurance step in there, and it has some other kind of rules for working with devs, and here's when you tag it with this label, and it's a framework that's worth probably
And you can definitely get
sharing.
creative with it, right? So
Yeah,
Hoodie is just a very basic tool, and that's like intentional. And you can screw up with Hoodie big time because it allows you. It's like the freedom of Hoodie is its curse as well, because if you don't know how to set it up and how to make your own rules, then you can shoot yourself in the foot just as easy as with any other tool.
hold
So,
on. You're saying Hoodie, but you mean Trello, right?
oh, sorry, Trello.
Yeah, David, you
Um,
have Hoodie on the brain. David is the Hoodie mascot, by the way. David and Stefan. When's your birthday, David? We'll get you a hoodie maybe.
A hoodie, yeah. That doesn't
Yeah.
exist yet, by the way. I
Well,
think it's in production, I think. Anyways,
okay. Yeah.
of course I meant Trello. Yeah, Trello, like you can shoot yourself in the foot with that. So it's not just like, hey, use Trello and this is cards and you can comment, but it's more like how do you actually use these things to be productive and follow getting things done methodology or follow work the system kind of ideas, etc.
Yeah.
So there's definitely something there that we could dig deeper into.
And yeah, so I'd be curious, the listeners here that are part of the App Business MBA, I'd be curious to hear if that would be, of course, everyone's going to say yes, that we want that. But I guess it's like how bad. I don't know how to measure that because everyone's going to say, yeah, I want that. But it'd be more like what topics do we want to cover? But I think there's definitely room in the MBA for not only working with devs, but setting up systems for working with devs. I mean, the more I do with you with Opt-in Mobile, the more I realize how critical it is for a real app business to have these systems in place, not just the SOPs working with VAs or other things working with devs, but more robust systems for working with devs. And here's how you use GitHub. Oh, in fact, I have another question for you with GitHub that we'll do offline. But those kinds of things, like how do I, you know how we have the GitHub app and I pull a request from the repository every time, but I don't have a local version that is updating. So I don't know how to run the updated version, etc. Right? So those are questions that I'm sure anyone messing with GitHub is going to have that you could answer easily in a 5-minute video. So who knows? David might be a part of the app business MBA as we go forward, just because I see this being more and more important part of a real app business is understanding how to do all this stuff. Here, let me do my pitch real quick. What is it? appbusinesswebinar.com or appbusinessmba.com to check out the next. We're shooting for every Wednesday weekly webinars, and then the replay lasts for 24 hours in case you can't make the time. This week we're doing it at 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock my time, 3 p.m. Eastern, where normally it's been at noon Eastern. So we're seeing if the time doesn't change it a little bit. But I'd love to see you there, and if you miss it, then I'd love to hear your comments after you watch the replay. Yeah, it's my new big project, and I'm recording and editing videos like crazy. It's like twice as much work as I thought it was going to be, but I'll tell you, David, it's a lot of fun to do it. I mean, frankly, it's I don't know that I'm like a teacher guy. Like I don't think that's it, but I'm definitely not a motivator. I definitely don't want people. I don't want people to come along and me say, "Oh, you can do it. Come on, guys. Yeah, you got it." It's like I don't want to be that guy. I want people to say, "Hey, I want to do it. I'm motivated. I'm smart, and I want to go get after it." And then I tell them how to do it or how I did it. That's the thing I like. And for $1,000, it's like they're kind of raising their hand saying, "Okay, I'm motivated. Let's go figure it out." Like, I just don't want to tell anyone, "Oh, you're so special and you're so smart and you can do it." Like, let your mom tell you that. Like, after you've already decided you want to do it, let me come over here and then we'll go figure it out together. So, in fact, I got Tim Ogilvy, Think Gaming, as the September expert. So all about, remember how we had that great interview with him, and I felt like we could have just picked his brain forever on like, hey, what are the top apps doing? Because remember, he's got millions and millions of dollars of investors waiting to find the right apps to then create a big marketing push. And it's everything we talk on the podcast. Figure out retention, and the rest will happen. Like literally, you can figure out monetization, you can get user acquisition. It's retention is the key. And if you can figure that out, then you can figure everything else out. Well, I'd love for Tim to come on and say, here's the benchmarks that we're looking for. Here's what the top apps do. They're like getting $5 per download, and here's how they do it. Because he's got insight to all that because he's literally evaluating hundreds of apps a week to spend millions of dollars on. So that's the type of conversation we're trying to get in the MBA, and he signed up for September. So I'm pretty stoked about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Last time on the weekly live, I had great fun talking about a couple of questions we got. So why don't we take some more questions? Okay. So to everybody in the chat, would be very great if you could submit some more questions. In the meantime, I'm going to pick a question or two that we have gotten either via the chat last time and couldn't answer, or Facebook group or something like that. And one of them I touched on a recent episode. It was from Eric. I can actually not remember which Eric, but probably Eric Wroolie. But anyways.
Oh, you mean the Google Android expert?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah. Anyways, someone asked that enterprise don't use the current tools, which is a statement I made, and they were basically asking what other tools they are missing out on, and by this question trying to get to the point where basically eliminating those technologies from their own development stack, but also getting to know what the correct development stack would be. And
so basically the question is, hey, I'm working in enterprise as a developer, and I'm concerned that maybe I'm falling behind of some of the latest tools and resources because you insinuated that enterprise is not cutting edge, which that's definitely true. But and that's kind of the question. What am I missing out on, right?
Yes, and it
Okay.
could be someone working in enterprise, but it could also be someone who is working for themselves, but are just worried that they could miss out on the latest technology as well. So I would I would just, list my personal my personal favorites for bad technologies to use in current software. And we can pick up this for another episode or another weekly where we go more into like what you would use instead. But I think I'm just going to start with like, what I think is still stuck in enterprise, which shouldn't be there. So I said, some SVN um, instead of using Git. That's what I said on an early episode. That's an obvious one. But what I've seen time and time again is that the mindset is still like in the 90s, where you release software like every year or every 5 years, and that means you release seldom, so releases themselves don't have much attention, right? And the release process can be very bad. So there's no focus on releasing often and early. And today, of course, for various reasons, that's you can't do that. Everybody knows, lean startup, what have you. But how
Hmm.
can you actually do that if your infrastructure doesn't support it? And that's what automatic release processes do. So th- that's number one. They don't invest in solid processes, automated processes where releasing your software is easy. And if releasing is easy, then you release often. And because you release often, you release small bits, so releasing becomes more easy. So it's
Yeah.
a
Well,
feedback loop, right?
yeah. Another thing to remember is a lot of enterprise companies have billion with a B dollar businesses with software that still isn't on the internet. So it's not software as a service type companies. Like Salesforce is considered like a cutting edge thing,
Yeah.
and it's a 15, 12-year-old company, and it was like the first big enterprise SaaS off SaaS products aren't easy for these big hopefully you don't lose me here, but for these big enterprise companies, so a lot of them have traditional software, like think of Microsoft Office. It's a disk or it's a download, right? It's not online, although they're trying to do that. But so that makes it harder too, because it's not like you can A/B test your way through it and release to only like 1% of your customer base, like a lot of people do. It's like here's the new version. We got to get it right, and it's not easy. I mean, it's hard for them to do.
Exactly. Yeah, I lost you there in the middle for 20 seconds or so, but wasn't too bad. Yeah, so that's one thing, and I see that in a lot of companies, and if you don't automate your release processes, then you have a problem. Okay. Um, so very, tied to that is continuous deployment. That takes it like one step further. That means every change that, maybe not every change, but on a continuous cycle or on a recurring time frame, you put out releases. You continuously deploy to production your changes, and there's really no more release at all. And that some people, some very cutting edge software companies do that. They just, put everything into production, and that of course creates a totally different mindset on the development teams because they know everything I put in there actually gets to production, so I'd better not screw it up. So that takes it one step further, where you either have release trains that ship on a certain schedule. So for example, Google Chrome ships every 6 weeks, no matter what. And if your feature isn't
Hmm.
ready,
Okay.
it doesn't get included. But whatever is done in those 6 weeks will ship. And then, every 6 weeks there's a new Chrome. And so the teams don't have to worry so much about this is the deadline, like this is the release date, and if I miss it, my feature has to be ready, and maybe it's buggy, but at least it's ready. They don't do that. They just
So Dave, yeah, so one problem with this, David, is that, well, not problem, but if you're in an enterprise, it's going to take a write-off. It's going to take endorsement from several executives to change the release model. So I think because it's enterprise and because the question, we're going to assume that even if the guy who asked it is the CTO, he still is going to have to. He's not the ultimate decision maker. With any enterprise, it's like the government. You need like multiple sign-offs to get anything done. What are there besides for like strategies for things like that? Are there specific tools that you can share that maybe these guys aren't catching because they're so involved in their enterprise? They're not involved in like that level of development and stuff that they're on these teams that maybe don't use the right tools.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's like very depending on what you're trying to ship, what you're trying to build, how big your company is, etc. But those concepts like continuous deployment is something you can Google, and you can read a lot of material of regarding that, and they will tell you, like, you just need to read enough so you can find something that fits your use case, and you will find a lot of good examples from companies that do this, that are very successful with it, and that might help you convince your decision makers to change something.
Yeah. Or if you're on a smaller team, on a smaller, it doesn't have to be a smaller team, but usually it's the smaller, the more agile, and the more able to make changes. Like if you're not on the Outlook team, but you're on some kind of like smaller team inside of Microsoft, you could suddenly be the best performing team because you're releasing every 6 weeks or something. But this is definitely, I understand it, but it's a little out of my wheelhouse. You got more? You want to keep going, or you want to take another question?
I just do the last couple of things real quickly. So this is related, like people are stuck with .NET or Java, and that's just old stuff. Don't use it. If you do wanna pay attention to something that's growing, awesome, fast, and has a great community, then I'd look at Node.js. Because it can help you with both your server-side code and your build processes. You can
Is it open source?
Yeah, Node.js is just a runtime for JavaScript on the server, and so that's what Hoodie is running on. That's what a lot of the new web services that coming up are running on. It's all written in JavaScript, and we cannot just use JavaScript to write front-end code. We can use it to write back-end code as well. And so instead of writing your back-end code in ASP.NET or in Java or whatever, you can just use something that actually is growing in popularity rather than something that's behind 10 years.
You know why enterprises use Java and .NET? Because they're owned by big companies that can support the code. Java's Oracle, right? And .NET is Microsoft. Is that right? And so corporations, big enterprises love service contracts. They love that 12 to 18% a year that they spend on if it breaks, they can call someone. I think that's one of the big issues with open source is they're afraid to build anything on something that doesn't have a specific support offering tied to it.
No, I'm sure they have their reasons for it. It's just like, your reasons will not get you anywhere. So
right.
In the end, other people will out-execute you. So whatever, and
these are good things to remember. Go ahead.
The last thing is just, people are not embracing the web enough, and that's, of course, very personal for me, very dear to my heart. But I think, increasingly we've seen over the years that web's coming more and more important, and if you don't have any web development talent in-house, if you don't know how the web works, etc., I think that's bad, for your entire company. So that was my bit on like what you should, use, or what enterprise is not using correctly.
Yeah, it's actually a good reminder for someone working in a big company that then is trying to start something on the side, but he's using the same tools as he uses in the enterprise. And it's a good reminder that, look, you don't, they're, it's worth figuring out what modern companies are using. Because Hewlett Packard, Oracle, all these companies are multi-billion-dollar companies that aren't going anywhere, and they're not using modern tools. It's amazing
Yeah.
how long a company can survive on old ass technology. Um, okay, there's another question in the Facebook group that I don't think we background, and I really get this stuff well. Like I understand big sales teams, I understand huge product lines, and that's what I did for 10 years. So that I like, and I've never built a mobile app for that. I think creating a tool to help salespeople not only like reference documents that they need during like a sales call, but also maybe interact with customers in a way, not like customer management, but there's lots of options. There's lots of things that when we finish Opt-in Mobile, we'll figure out, okay, what's the next thing we want to do, and the enterprise market is something that I know pretty well that I could go tackle. But I'm not going to use his last name because I figure we'll use last names if they're a guest before, and if they haven't been a guest, we'll just use first names. But Thomas in the Facebook group had a question about enterprise mobility and how his role is basically mobile apps for internal audiences, right? Which is, Hewlett Packard. Well, I want to say 100,000 people, but maybe it's smaller now. But let's just say 100,000 people plus all these partners that they only have one customer or partner, which is Hewlett Packard. So Hewlett Packard is humongous, 100,000 employees, and so Thomas would be saying, what mobile apps or what things could I be doing, especially around gamification, for a 100,000 person enterprise, and that is a really cool problem to solve because there's tons of sales gamification engines, or services, and that's like the most obvious one. But there's also things like, enterprises are always releasing new tools and asking people to participate, especially when it comes to like their new developer community, and they need the product managers to write a blog post, or they need the product manager or the product marketing manager to get on the thing and answer questions for an hour a week or something, hosting webinars. Like there's lots of things that the bosses want to incentivize the employees do. So I just thought that was an interesting question and challenge because I think there's going to be millions and millions and millions of dollars made, hundreds of millions of dollars made in this mobile enterprise space where you can create platforms and tools to help either them enterprise employees execute faster and better, or get them going in a certain direction that the bosses want them to go. Yeah, it's going to be it'd be a fun challenge to follow, but hopefully we can even participate in, because again, that's my wheelhouse, and I know that stuff really
Sounds
well.
good.
So, we talk about this. I really think every week in mobile, there's like $1 million opportunity, like easy multi-million-dollar opportunity, and it's like, I just hope that listeners or other people that are active in mobile are recognizing just how amazing the opportunities are for people to like go build something. I mean, it's really insane. Like I have to stop myself because, like I'm saying, we have four. You and I have two projects. I have 5 projects overall, and they're all happening at the same time. And it's like, but there's so much opportunity. It's like I need to make sure I'm doing the right things. But yeah, it's just a really fun place to be.
So we have one more question in the chat from Eric, and it's to you. So the question is, you, Chris, have a blog post where you talk about incentivized ad colony videos. Since that time, have you had any problems or seen any downsides?
Well, the only almost problem was Apple was rejecting apps that had what we call, incentivized video. The Bungle guys were saying, Ben specifically was saying, hey, let's not call it incentivized ad, let's call it opt-in advertising, which I like that. So to try that new vernacular, new name, the opt-in advertising through Ad Colony and Vungle works amazingly well for me. I haven't seen a downtick at all, except I sold the series of apps that was generating, that I was leveraging Ad Colony the most for, but I sold that series of apps off, and then I put Ad Colony into some other apps. Again, one of my challenges is that I have a ton of apps still. I think I have like 40 or 50, and I'm just not into them anymore. Like I had them for 2 years, and they were kind of like how I learned how to do some of this stuff. I'm really into the Macroid Mania. I really like that idea. I'm amazingly into opt-in mobile because I think it solves an amazing problem. So I just have lost some interest. Now I just use a lot of my apps as like testing things. So I put Optimizely in some apps and stuff. But for monetization, the number one way that my apps make money, well, yeah, probably number one, or 50-50, in-app purchases and opt-in video ads, for sure. And we talk about that a lot in the App Business MBA about how to, okay, opt-in videos, I got it, but what does that mean? And it means like, okay, find the right places to put triggers for a pop-up that says, hey, would you like to watch a video for more coins? Or you could skip the coins and go right to the content like, hey, you need hints, or you want to unlock this level, or you want the super boost, or you want the magical sword, or you want the tropical fish category unlocked, or whatever you want to give away that's your in-app content, you can do it with that. But yeah, I'm a super big fan of this opt-in advertising. I think AdCalling and Vungle both provide really great platforms for that. There's been a couple other that have come out, like Flurry, AppLovin. I haven't used them yet. I think Mopo even has it. I haven't used any of those yet, just because Ad Colony, it's like 100% fill rates, $10 eCPMs. Yeah, it's just there's no reason to switch anything right now for me. But in Macroid Mania, we'll probably test multiple video providers just because that's the right way to do it. But for me to go back and like release new apps there, it's again, like I said, I'm not super interested in these apps anymore. So they're doing okay, but what they are is what they are, and I'm gonna move on to other stuff. I'll probably sell them soon. But yeah, the Ad Colony ads, Vungle ads, they work amazingly well. I'd be curious, Eric, if that's not working for you or why you asked the question. Do you remember his Android app? What was the app that Eric has?
Was it just one app, or was it like several?
It was several, but I think like most, he was making most from one app or two apps. The 80-20 rule apps.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Well, I think you'll just tell us.
Yeah, Eric, if you're hearing, let us know. Sorry, man, we're looking at so many apps, but if you want, man, call me or email me, and we can wrap out. We can figure out a.
Was it the hearing thing? Or was
yeah. It was that. It was the spying thing. Remember, because we were saying, it's for people hard of hearing and for creepies, for creepers. Yeah. And then I made fun of my grandpa. Sorry, Papa. Yeah, so I would say I forget what the unlockable items were. I know he had some in-app items that he could unlock, but yeah, there's got to be a way to use video. In fact, that's how we go into every app we make is, okay, how can we build the app so that we can leverage video for ads or for unlockable content. But Eric, email me, man, and we'll figure out the best way to do it. But I still am a huge believer in incentivized or opt-in video ads.
All right, then. I think if you don't have any other question, do we want to wrap it up?
Yeah. This week coming out, gosh, I already forget the Monday one. What was the Monday one? Do you remember?
I don't know. Remember the
semantic versioning.
Yeah.
Semantic versioning.
Which we do first.
Yeah. Okay, but this week has here. I'm gonna go look real quick. It has semantic versioning. It has let's see here. It has the interview that I was talking about that I didn't think I did very good. But
struggling developers. the
And then
report
struggling
thing.
developers, we went over the Vision. That's actually a really interesting one
Yeah,
because
that was a
we
cool
went
one.
over the Vision mobile report, and it got a lot of attention, like how many developers aren't making a ton of money. Um, and I think David and I both have we have the same opinion, but a different opinion than like the media went with. And I'd be curious what the listeners think. But that'll be Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday. We're not sure which one that's going to be. Um, Hazel's in charge of all that now, right? We don't even know what we're doing. Uh, um, but yeah, hopefully you guys like that. And then and don't forget every Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, we have this live like back and forth, and we'd love for you to join us. abpweekly.com, and it's a chat thing at the bottom, and then you can watch us talk and like put faces to voices, and tell us what you want us to talk about. We obviously don't know everything, but we aren't shy about talking about it. So yeah.
Okay, thanks, man. Talk to you next
Okay.
time.
Thanks, David. Thanks, guys. Bye.